You
Um,
disappeared, Dhammarato. Oh, you're back again now.
yeah, what happens is on these recordings is Skype lets us communicate directly until we record. And then they change it so that you talk to them and I talk to them and they sort it all out, put a video out, and put us back together again through their server.
It's a bit
And that's,
Star Trek.
uh, yeah, aren't we lucky we've got both Scotty and the pointy eared fellow right here with us. Chatting, I don't know where he is. Leonard Nimoy is his name. Dr. Spock, the pointy-eared dude. But the
Dead.
engineer was Scotty.
That's right.
Okay. So wisdom and engineering together. Now we've got a team. Anyway, back to talking about karma. What we normally understand is, and you can see this, and we use it all the time. An action will give a reaction. That's basically what the point is. But what it becomes magically is the law of karma, which says basically dividing things into good and bad, that if you give a good action, it will give a good result. And if you do a bad action, it's going to give you a bad result. That's what they teach. And every 5 or 10 year old can walk by and says, "Oh no, I can get away with it. I can smoke that cigarette in the toilet, and you're not going to catch me."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so the old rule makers come back and scratch around a while, and they will say then, okay, good action gives good results, and bad action gives bad results, and they add the addition no matter what. No matter how long it takes, you're going to get caught and punished by, and that by is an interesting question because the guy who's trying to write this rule, he does not hold that authority himself because that's just a dude that's saying that. This is where the law of karma comes from, is the idea that good action gives good results and bad action gives bad results no matter what. That no matter what is the problem. This is where we get the idea that something, even if it dies, it's got to be reborn, that the karma machine eventually will dig you up out of the ground just to kick your ass. That's the whole point of that story. Why? Because we're trying to teach uneducated, ignorant children how to behave. But we're doing it with a stick rather than a carrot. Well, actually, the carrot is always dangled. You've seen the story, or you've seen the drawing of the donkey with a stick out in front of him that is somehow tied to the wagon, so that as he goes along trying to get that carrot, the wagon moves along, moving the carrot also. Therefore, he never gets to the carrot. So that's one thing, the carrot, the promise, but you never get the results. However, the stick, that one is the one that's used because it can be used. And so this is what the church and society and the government and the police, that's their business to use the stick. Why? Because they really can't count on some cosmic stick doing its job. Perhaps the cosmic stick takes too long. I mean, after all, even God talks about hell in the sense of after you're dead, or maybe, I don't know why they have that idea in Christianity that hell is something that happens after you're dead, because the Buddhists know that we go through it all the time.
Do you think that would have been Jesus' original thinking?
That's actually a completely different discourse. We could go off in the direction of how enlightened Jesus is or was, and how wrong Christianity is, because they don't listen to anything he has to say. They're too high. They're too busy polishing him off and putting him up on high shelf. Now the Protestants, they've got a trick though. They want to grab him off of that crucifix so that they can put him up in the sky. But the Catholics are too smart for that, because they'll grab him by the foot and drag him back down and nail him back up on that cross. But you see, neither one of them see Jesus as a teacher. One of them sees Jesus as a crucified Savior who is punishing himself for our sins so that we don't have to punish ourselves for our sins. And the other crowd sees
like
Jesus as an eternal Savior way up there in the sky someplace. But neither one of them see Jesus as a companion teacher sitting on the porch with us, having a conversation about the way to live. And that's what Jesus was trying to do. He was trying to teach people how to live. And so much of what he had to say was the same thing as the Buddha had to say. It's remarkable, some of the things he has to say. That's what, you could also go so far as to say any good PhD program in Buddhism should have a course on Jesus.
So are there any of the Christian denominations teaching in that way?
There have been people who have tried, but they don't really have the schools or the skills to do it. But there have been attempts, but it's always slapped down, because Christianity has a completely different view of Jesus. He's Lord and Savior to them, not a wise old fat funny man.
So it's going from he will save you to you have to save yourself, but I'll help you along the way.
I won't even help you. I'll just point the way. Here, I'll give you a map.
Yeah.
I'll show you
handy.
How to read maps. I'll give you a map and show you how to read maps, but I am not going with you. I am not going to show you the way, the whole show. And the reason for that is because I cannot crawl inside your head to do the necessary repairs. Only you can do that. I know. I used to try to crawl inside people's heads. It's really sloppy in there, and I don't really get much done. So, anyway, back to our talk on karma, or on action, or on cause and effect. The Buddha could see, and in fact, I think that that's the point, that it's so obvious that there is a cause and effect. The wind blows, the door closes. Now you can see that actually took a little bit of figuring out for humanity, but over 10,000 years we already gotten used to understanding that if you pull the trigger, that you're going to get the action. Okay? And yet, the whole idea of good action getting good results and bad action getting bad results is quite magical. So let's go through this and look at it for a bit. Okay, the first thing that we have to look at is that what determines a good action. So the example would be I invest in the stock market. And then the stock market goes up and I sell it for a profit. Therefore, that was a good action. But if I invest in the stock market and the stock market falls and I sell at a loss, then I'll say that the action of buying was a bad action. In this regard, often the results of the action itself and its validity is determined by the results. The result of the action determines the value of the action. Now let's look at another kind of action. And that is on the sport field, they make a touchdown or a goal or something, and in the process, the flag goes out on the play. The penalty flag is thrown. The whistle is blown.
Mm-hmm.
Half the people stand up and boo. They don't like that whistle. The other half, they stand up and cheer. Now, was that a good call or a bad call? Now, I'm not asking is it a correct call that could only be determined maybe by video, but even then, the video needs to be at exactly the right set of angles so that we could all agree what's correct. We're not going to be able to do that probably even with instant replay. So, the whole point that we're making here is many actions are mixed. Some people like it, some people don't. Or they're mixed in the way of sometimes I like it and sometimes I don't. And that sometimes I like it and sometimes don't are only within a second of each other. So this whole idea of liking and not liking has a great quality in the control of what's good and bad. And so all of this stuff is wrapped back up with paticca samuppada, or the way the mind works. Because what happens generally, if there is no wisdom, in other words, we're just ordinary people operating an ordinary way, living our lives in an ordinary reptilian way, in the sense of operating by instincts. Why? Because operating with our frontal cortex through wisdom takes a bit of work. We got to be up for it. Most of us live most of our lives just following the habit or following the patterns. A lot of people learn to drive that way. They've driven this same road 100 times, every day they go. I know how to drive this road. That's when they're going to have an accident because they're not watching where they're going. They assume they know, and so it goes on automatic pilot. And then something new will happen. A ditch digger comes in the way, or a kid runs in the road, or a football comes through the windshield. All kinds of possibilities that make it new, change. But our pattern, or let us say the reptilian brain, works on a set of old patterns. In other words, it's got to be done that way. Therefore, I'm going to keep doing it that way, even if new information comes in. The wisdom is let it go like that, but you be very careful, because when new information comes in, we're going to have to change the way we do things. So here's where anicca comes in. If anicca comes in and we are wise to it, then we don't go into the direction of dukkha. We will go instead in the direction of, it doesn't matter, it's not my business, it doesn't belong to me, it's anatta. So we have that that trilokana of anicca, dukkha, anatta. Things are happening, changing all the time. Are we going to be there for it or not? If we are not, then we're going to follow the old pattern. And the old pattern sets up like this generally, is that if I have a feeling of liking something, then that means that I'll want it. And if I like it a lot and want it a lot, then I'll think that it's good. Okay? So in that regard, we can say a particular drug name. And some people, when they hear that word, they'll say good or bad, depending upon their own experience with it, rather than a full analyzation. Okay? So we go for good or bad, and that good or bad is based in feelings, not based in evidence. So if I like it, it must be good. And if I don't like it, it must be bad. And if I like it, I want it. This is real ignorance. The right way to do it is, if I like it, let's look at what's going on. Why do I like it? Is it really wholesome? Let's do some investigation. And if I don't like something, then let's investigate what's going on, because now because I've woken up, I don't have to get angry because I don't like something. I don't have to haul off even if I don't slap the kid. I don't even have to haul off if I'm not angry. I can not like what the child does, but I can still respond to that child with wisdom, and that may in fact be humor. But when we're ignorant, we follow a certain pattern. Okay, if that's the case, then what we're really looking at for karma is that it has to do with the cause and effect. And if the cause is wisdom at the point of contact, then we're going to have a better solution to the problem rather than following the old familiar reptilian, let's go to war kind of feeling system that we generate quite quickly. So, this is what we mean then by watching what's going on. So let's get back to that whole point about the penalty flag got thrown. What Buddha says is, in fact, this is what we mean by mixed karma, a mixed reaction. That things, in fact, are generally mixed. That wholly, by itself, with all ways of looking at it, it's very rare to find an action that is totally good. But if there were something like that that was totally good, or good in this circumstance, then it's going to have good results fairly immediately. For instance, I'm hungry, I eat a meal, and now because I've eaten, I'm not starving. I'll live, I'll survive. I did something good and I got a good result. Okay? Cause and effect within a certain period of time, or let us say a short, but you can see the little cause effects all along that you ate the food, which means now you can digest it. Because it's being digested, and now you can get the energy from it. So it's still all cause and effect along the line, that there is no gap or time lag. But the people want a gap or a time lag so that they can then hold to their belief that a bad action will eventually give you bad results. And they teach that all over the place. Even down to the point of you can't even kill a fly, because if you do, that fly is going to someday kill your butt too. Or something like that. I don't know.
The chain.
So this whole idea of that guarantee really is going quite against the whole teaching of the Buddha, because the Buddha, you know, he called himself Tathata, or actually Tathagata, which actually means, the word Tathata means here, this. This is it. The original translations use the word thus as a translation, so Tathata got translated into thus gone one. And when people hear thus gone one, it makes no sense. What does that mean? Trying to figure it out. Well, what they're doing is they're taking, you know, the Pali bit by bit and translating it into English. So the word gone is very similar to our word come. Come and go, they work together. So it means basically the same thing. So it actually means the one who has come thus, or the one who has gone to the thus. And what is thus? This. That's thus. This is it. This moment.
This
Right
moment.
now. This present moment. This here now. This is what we mean. It's this. Not something in the past or in the future. Not something outside. It's this. Not a that anymore. So the one who has come to this is a better translation. It's almost understandable that way. But in our language, we would say closer to be here now, or in the present moment, and we understand it more that way. But in the language of the Tathata, in the Tathagata, everybody knew exactly what it meant. The problem with Buddhism today is we don't know what Pali meant, and the language itself has been lost, and that the ones who rediscovered the language and started putting it together weren't Buddhist at all. They had no clue about what the Buddha was teaching. They were university professors from Oxford, and they were Christians. And so we have all of this Christian language into the Western Buddhism that the Asians don't even have to put up with.
interesting. I heard someone talking about suffering the other day, and they said for a long time the term didn't really sit well with them, and he said he sort of much prefers struggle.
That's even too harsh.
You think that's too harsh?
Mm-hmm. It's not a struggle. It's unsatisfying.
So we're referring to dukkha.
That's what I mean. So dukkha being suffering is a big deal. But that's what that's what the Catholics want Jesus to do. If he suffers enough, then his suffering will help us. Therefore, we really want him to suffer.
Yeah.
All right.
A really good son.
Right. Got to nail him up.
Yeah.
So, this business of suffering, when we look at the actual Pali in reference to other languages, an important point is that dukkha has an opposite, and that opposite is sukha, and that is translated as if they had nothing to do with each other. Dukkha is translated as suffering, and sukha is translated as sexual pleasure. Neither one of them are correct, and they're not opposites like that. But what we could say to make them opposite so that we understand it better is one is satisfying and the other one is not satisfying. One is good enough and the other one is not good enough. That's what dukkha and sukha means. I don't see any struggle in there. You could be dissatisfied and you're not struggling. If you are struggling, then you are in dukkha, but you don't have to struggle to be dissatisfied. So it's not as big, and yet we see all of these words as really, really big words, meaning big events. An example would be using the word immersion in the suttas. Okay, because immersion sounds like a really, really big word. How about exalted? Or perhaps the word bliss. You see, these are all really, really highfalutin words that we have attributed to the Pali, when in fact the reality of the situation is that the Pali was a real language, talked to real people, and they really got it. And here all of these Westerners are trying to take a westernized version of, and Western translations of this Dhamma, trying to make sense out of it, and they wind up working really hard at it and not getting anywhere.
Because your audio's got quite bad, actually, Dhammarato.
I don't know whether it's connection or whether it's how is it now?
It might be me. No, it's not really any better. It's okay. It's sort of a lot of buffering. Not as in computer buffering, but buffeting. That's the best word.
If it's the microphone itself, I can do something about it. If it's the internet, we'll have to kind of put up with the connection.
Okay.
All right. Do you think it's the microphone itself?
It could be.
All right. I can unplug it and replug it in and see if that does anything. How is it, by the way? Is it good now? Is it good now? Is it good now?
That's a bit better. That's better. That is better.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it like that. Or let me unplug it. Keep talking to me though, because you're not helping me. Okay. Is it good now? Give me a percent, or give me from 1 to 10. Okay. Give me a 1 to 10.
That's about 5. 5.
All right. How is it now? How is it now?
6.
Okay. How is it now?
5 or
Don't
6.
work too hard. You're making this really hard for me. How's it now?
7.
Okay, let's leave it there, all right?
That'll do. That'll do. That'll do. It's
That'll
good
do.
enough.
Okay. Yes, that's what we're getting at, is that dukkha is often misunderstood. Also, when we use the word karma itself, the word karma is one of the easiest words to translate, and yet that one was one that winds up not being translated, and therefore winds up being, let us say, having more value than it actually deserves. All it means is behavior. So you could go so far as to say good behavior gives good results and bad behavior gives bad results. And immediately you can say, wait a minute, that's not true. Because I can see Donald Trump getting away with all kinds of bad behavior, and we don't know what the future is going to be. He may be elected a second term. Who knows what's going to happen? Okay, so we cannot say that good behavior always gives good results and bad behavior always gives bad results, because we can see many places that bad behavior gets good results if you can get away with it.
So would you say that, even taking Trump as an example, he can behave in a certain inappropriate way and maybe even get positive results from his point of view? Yeah. But would it be fair to say that over time it'll end up biting him in the bum?
We don't know. He may be dead before then. We don't know what kind of payoff that he's going to get. That in fact, that's where all of that came from. So let's put it this way. Let's narrow things down to the village. And you've got a village bully. And then when he grows up, he becomes the head man or the warlord of the village. And he'll do anything he wants to do, and so he winds up with a really, really nice house, and everybody in the village hates him, but they keep sucking up to him, giving him a nice life, and then when his old age, he dies, and then they say, okay, well now it's time for the karma machine to come and give him his just reward because we wouldn't do it. There's where it comes in. Actually, you could say that hell is a kind of revenge. That's what it's mostly used for by Christianity. They used to think that they themselves were in danger of hellfire, but in the past 50 years they converted to completely, no, you're a Christian now, you're going to heaven, everybody else is going to hell. Let's go make sure that we can rub it in so that they know how bad it really is, how bad they're going to get it.
a good conscription tactic.
Yes, in fact, it's built-in fear in that regard. That's the whole point of teaching the children. So you could say that hell is just the same as the teaching of bad action gets bad result. Only you don't know how bad we're going to make it for you. Let me tell you so you'll know. And so this is what happens with this mentality, is that it puts a delay time in it, because hell, they say, doesn't happen until after you're dead. So go ahead and misbehave all you want to, and you'll get away with it, especially if you go suck up to the boss just in time. Okay? So why suck up to the boss and have a baptism as an infant, or even a baptism as a teen? Why don't we do a deathbed confession? That way we can have all of it. We can go do anything we want to do, and they get forgiven for it. Well, isn't that what the Christians are doing now? I mean, look at the politics that they're playing.
Catholics have always done it, haven't they?
All right. So here's one that's the same thing. And that is that I had a conversation with a Muslim guy, a friend of mine, and he was saying that that there are a lot of people in his town that they may not ascribe to or know anything about ISIS or ISIL, but that they do have the mentality of Islamic or the Islamicism, in the sense that Islam is destined to take over the world, and it's my job to make that happen, no matter how many people I hurt. Okay? World domination, Islamic style. And so the question to this guy is, oh, well, um, killing all of these people, isn't that kind of against the Quran? And the guy will answer, oh, well, it's because I'm doing it for Allah, so Allah will forgive me. Oh, sounds like Christianity to me. Allah will forgive me for going out and harming people because I'm doing it in His name. And so finally the retort to that is, which is better? To actually go according to the way that we know is correct, to go according to the way that we know that Allah would approve of, and get the approval of Allah without needing to get forgiveness for what we've done. All right? If we haven't done anything wrong, we don't need this forgiveness, and we're beginning to understand this forgiveness is pretty wishy-washy, that it may not be what it's all cracked up to be. So all of this winds up being magical stories. That's where we got started with this. This is all magic. Where we need to draw the reality to it is that there is cause-effect. And that good and bad is a decision that we have made based upon our feelings. And so let's go a little bit deeper into that, back to the very source of it. In Genesis, there's the story of Adam and Eve. Right? Christians, they love that story. It's got all kinds of actors and scenes and talking snakes and poisoned apples and, well, wait a minute, yeah, poisoned apples, all kinds of stuff. And guess what? They get to blame it on the women. She made me do it. Okay. She made me eat that thing. She hung it out in front of me. She knew I'd have to bite on it.
It's not the voices after all.
Okay. But there is a moral to the story, and I didn't even understand this until I got it from Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, because you see, he's Asian. He's taking the story as the actual story in the Bible, without the Christian baggage that comes along with the story. And so we look at it in the sense of like an Aesop fable. And what I mean by that is the fables always had a moral. By the way, you're cutting yourself off now at your eye level.
Sorry.
There, that's better. All right, so we what we do is that we go by this magical system of thought that we learned as a child, expecting the magic to work, and it doesn't. And that's why things are unsatisfactory in general. So back to the story of Adam and Eve. They, in fact, are eating. What did they eat? Certainly it wasn't an apple. What they ate was the fruit of that tree. Well, here, when we mean eating a fruit in all languages, that idea of getting the fruit, it means to get the results. Doesn't mean an actual piece of fruit from an actual tree. It means the result. Okay, the result of something, like the fruit of our labor, or the fruit of the loom,
Mm.
or the fruit of my loins. This is what we mean by fruit, not necessarily the kind that you can eat. So when we say then, okay, they ate of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, which means now they have to suffer the consequences, or they have to put up with the fact that they have knowledge of what's good and what's bad. Well, where did this knowledge come from? Some people think that, oh, that's knowledge that only God should have. Another way of looking at it is, no, that's just shit they made up. This is good, I like it. This is bad, I don't like it. Good and bad is a judgment of the mind. And we can find each other to agree with that. And when you agree with me that that's good, now we both can be happy and satisfied and comfortable that the fact that we know what goodness is. When in fact, wait a minute, maybe we don't. Maybe all we have is a minor little consensus. Maybe if we bring the guy from across the street over and ask him, he will say it's not good. So this is a value judgment, the whole quality of judge, of good and bad. This is in the Bible. It says, judge not, lest ye not be judged. Well, guess who we're judging most of the time?
Ourselves.
Right. And so if we're judging ourselves, guess what? We're under and we're subject to being judged. And so we can look at who gets judged and who's not. But the main point is that once we decide what's good and bad, that means we no longer live in a paradise, because we can always find something wrong with our paradise. And if we take that piece that is wrong out or bad out of our paradise, then we wind up having less and less and less of a paradise. And so that's how
If
Adam
we
and
take
Eve.
that bit that is wrong out.
Pardon?
Sorry, did you say if we take that bit that is wrong with our paradise out, then we end up having less and less of a paradise? Is
Yes,
that the phrase you
exactly.
use?
Mm-hmm. And so in that
Our
regard,
world shrinks.
our world shrinks, and not only does it shrink, but we're throwing more and more paradise out because it ain't good enough.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So what that means is that Adam and Eve threw themselves out of the Garden of Eden, and they didn't have to take a step, because what they did was they changed their mind, they changed their attitude. It once was a paradise, but now that I know how to find fault with it, it's not a paradise anymore. It's the woods, it's a jungle.
Mm.
It's not a garden, it's a hell. Because look how many things I can find wrong with it.
Mm.
And so this is how we live our
Which is all.
lives, destroying our own garden, destroying our own paradise, simply because we're judging it, it ain't good enough.
Mm.
And that it's not inherent in our behavior at all.
To make these judgments.
To make, well, that there is good behavior and that there is bad behavior, close the door. End of sentence. Because there's always extenuating circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? An example of that was, oh, gosh, there's so many. Let's use this one. There was once a movie I saw to where there was a bunker, and that Hitler was in that bunker, and that someone brought in a suitcase full of explosives and put it in the room, and Hitler happened to have gone to the bathroom when that thing went off. And so he survived for a few more months. which made the war last a few more months. So I ask you, was it a good thing or a bad thing that they put that bomb in that bunker? Because that was the action.
It was a good thing. It's just unfortunate it didn't get him.
Well, it depends upon whose side you're on. If you were Hitler's granddaughter, you wouldn't have said this, what you just said. It's a matter that you're taking a position.
But it would depend on degree of benefit. You see, what benefits most people?
What's this whole idea about panatipada, of not taking life? That you're saying, okay, it's okay to take life if I can get some benefit out of it. It's okay to go around and kill if I can get some benefit out of it.
Yeah, but is it not less of an evil? Lesser evil.
Who's making what called evil? I, in fact, intentionally avoided that word. I was just using good and bad. Now what we do is we polish bad to the point that it shines like evil.
Okay, more satisfactory, less satisfactory.
All right. Okay, but what you're saying is that there is a use for killing if you can get the benefit out of it. So all we need to do is to teach our young men to sing the patriotic song, Rule Britannia, or the Star Spangled Banner, or My Country 'Tis of Thee. Get them all patriotic up so that they begin to believe that it's a good thing to go to war and kill people.
On the whole, I'd say it's not.
Well, that's exactly what happened in the guy that carried that suitcase into the bunker. He was indoctrinated that it was okay to kill Hitler and everybody else that was in that bunker.
So okay, so if I'm devil's advocate, what would you have done in that situation if you knew that Hitler was going to do what he was going to do?
I would have been in Thailand not even knowing about it until I saw the movie 30 years later. That's...
yeah.
I would have never been near that suitcase. I would have never been near that bunker. So and that's in fact the question that you ask is very similar to that question that you see the Christians asking all the time. What would Jesus do? Yes, Jesus wouldn't do any of this stuff. He wouldn't have gotten himself into the situation you got yourself into. He wouldn't have been so stupid to try to have to get out of that situation.
Yeah.
All right.
These are extraordinary circumstances, though. They're not ordinary.
But we can call it extraordinary circumstances so that we can get what we like.
You may have decided that. Yeah, I accept that. But you may have decided that if I take this action, it's going to probably cost me my own life, but thousands, perhaps millions of people's lives will be saved as a consequence.
Yes, I know they make movies out of that, but in general, it never happens. Let's talk about how we can live our lives now without having to get put in a situation of having to give my life for thousands of other people. I don't even think that was the situation Jesus was in, or anybody even thought about it that way until years after. He didn't go get hung on the cross because he was expecting to be the savior of humanity.
Well, if he did get hung on the cross at all.
Well, that's the story, though. That's the story that's told about him. Sure. But the likelihood of that being the true story is not high. No. And so this is what makes it magical. That in fact that justifies Jesus' crucifixion. Because otherwise it's hard to justify. Why did our dude get hung up? Well, in fact, that's actually quite reasonable to understand that, and that is that he misbehaved himself in the temple. He could have gone to the head priest and explained the situation. That's what Buddha would have done. In fact, Buddha would have already been friends with the priest, the high priest Caiaphas, Caiaphas, that's his name. And so go to Caiaphas and point out that, hey, man, this is the temple, and you're in charge of the temple. Why do you let the bankers in here? Why don't you put them outside over in the corner over there? You can still get your cut of the action. Just don't have it here in the holy place. And Jesus could have done it that way. But oh no, he had to think, oh, I'm going to do this myself. I'm the boss here. I can do this. And that happened in the first start of the week, and by the end of the week, he was nailed right up. They didn't put up with it. So when you look at the events about really what happened, it's actually a very good idea to listen to what Jesus has to say, because what he had to say fits really well. Okay, here's an example of that makes him really kind of look like a Buddhist monk, and that is that the foxes of the field and the birds have their nest, and the foxes have their nested burrows in the field, but the Son of Man has no place to rest his head. Voila, he's a vagabond. He's a bhikkhu.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can go to the other part about it, about the lilies of the field gilding themselves when plain dress will be okay.
When, sorry? The connection's
Don't you
getting
know,
quite
don't
bad
you know
now.
the parable of the lilies in the field?
No, I have heard of it, but you need to remind me.
Okay. Well, the lilies of the field are okay as lilies. They're not dressed up in fancy clothes. That's the story
fine
about
as
that.
they are.
They're just okay like they are. There's other things that are quite intuitive, or let us say telling, if you understand. And that is, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Now, the Christians have been waiting for 2,000 years.
Right now.
Right, at hand, here it is. This is it. At hand means right here, right now.
Yeah. The connection, I think, got really bad. Now connection's quite poor now. It says poor connection here.
Okay, well, that poor connection is not on this computer, so it's possibly on your end, because the connection here is quite good.
Let me try something a minute. I'm going to move a bit. We're going for a walk. I'm going for a walk.
All right. If you're on Wi-Fi, it may be good to get closer to the router. If you're anywhere near.
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. There we go. Right underneath.
Right. Okay. So the internet here is good.
Okay. There we
go. All right. So you've got that. All right. Well, we were talking about Jesus and talking about some of the parables that he told, which puts him, if you listen to the things that Jesus actually said and people begin to follow that. And here's another example that he wanted this group to sit up with him and watch all night. But they fell asleep. They weren't able to stay up with him. But what he was doing was he was performing a known ceremony. We know about this, to sit up all night, to watch. What do you think anapanasati, or being mindful, is? It's being watchful. And the Christians, they just blow right past those lines. They don't have a clue about what Jesus said when he talked about sit up and watch with me. And so there's a whole lot of stuff in there that shows some real wisdom. And it must have been that he really did impress the people who were around him.
Mm.
And so a lot of magical stories got built up, and more and more and more magic was added on. But the original wisdom was there. Now, the question in that regard, this is another one of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, now that we're talking about it, because the question is, where did Jesus get his stuff? Was he a Buddhist? And Bhikkhu Buddhadasa says, not necessarily, because he's actually too far away from Buddhism. What he's saying is wisdom, but the truth, the absolute real truth, is available to anyone. Even the Buddha said that. He found an old path and rediscovered something that had been known long ago and forgotten. Well, if if Buddha can discover it, then perhaps it was discovered in the Mediterranean. That's Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's position. And so I've done a lot of
universal truth.
Real universal truths. I don't believe it because I've done so much research to say, there were Buddhists there. The likelihood of him getting the wisdom that he got, it could have been filtered down through several generations and several groups, but the touch of the wisdom. An example of that is the Essenes or the Essenes. Depends upon how you say it. Nobody knows. That were from an earlier time than Jesus, but if you look at the ruins of that place, knowing that they were probably Jewish, but they lived like bhikkhus, like Buddhist monks. They did everything like that. And so there's also the group in Alexandria, which we know that were, in fact, healers. And the name of this group, we have been passed down into our English language. The word therapy and therapist comes from this healing school in Alexandria called Therapute, except that the word Theraputa is exactly the same thing as Theravada, with the Thera being the elders. And this was a known school, and that it did exist in the time of Jesus. And they said that Jesus was in Egypt, so maybe as a child he made a connection with this group. We don't know a lot of information, but we do know that there was a lot of interplay, intercommunication. That we know that Alexander the Great came to India and then left India. But the story is he got his tail handed to him in India by Ashoka, who was the Buddhist emperor of the time. Now, I don't know exactly what's going on. That would be an interesting way of research of how did Ashoka become emperor unless he had a real battle or a real war to wage, and it could have been the invading army of Alexandria, because this is exactly the same time when Buddhism shows up with art, statuary. With art. Because before this time, there were three symbols of the Buddha. One was the Dhamma Chakra, the wheel of the Dhamma. The other symbol of the Buddha was the Bodhi leaf. Still common. The third one is the picture of a tree with a seat under it. A sitting place. So these were the original. But now we have, look at all these Buddha rupas. We have fat Buddhas, we have thin Buddhas, we have starving Buddhas, we've got standing Buddhas, we've got Buddhas on Vendabat, we've got all of this art. Where did it come from and when did it happen? The answer is 2nd and 3rd century BC. That's where it comes from. At the exact time when Alexander was in India.
So around about 250 years after the Buddha's death, something
Or maybe
like
even
that.
150 to 200 years after the
Yeah,
Buddha.
yeah,
They have
yeah.
reconfigured it. Now they look at the most likely death of the time of the Buddha was 407 BC, 47 to 411. For a long time they had it calculated as about 486 BC, but that looks more like the time that he was born, not the time that he died.
Mm-hmm.
So that time there, that's that difference. It's not 250 years. It's more like 150 to 170 years.
Okay. And they're
Okay.
basing that on old documents, or is that archaeological evidence?
We know absolutely that Emperor Ashoka came to power in 311 BC. We know it, which was
Right.
just 200 or 100 years exactly. So he was a young man 100 years later. Where all of the stuff we find in archaeologically digging up and all of the stuff like that happened about 270 BC, in that range, in that neighborhood of time,
Mm.
which was also about the time that all the statuary. So maybe the Greeks brought statuary, Ashoka got a load of it and liked it. And so statuary started showing up during that period of time.
Mm.
Wow, have we gotten way off of karma? So
Yeah.
let's get back to karma, because it's got an end point that I want to get around to. First off, it means action. It means behavior. And we can see that the determination of the good behavior or the bad behavior often has to do with the results, not the act itself. But we can point at things that we know will generally have a better possibility of a good outcome. Things like generosity and gratitude. Those are behaviors that generally will get a good result. Not guaranteed. No guarantees. Okay, that's the problem with our behavior is that, and so that gives us the point. This is really good. This is another talk I had with Bhikkhu Buddhadasa when I mentioned to him about meditation. If at first you don't succeed, try again. And that's when I got the wake up call immediately. He says, no, when at first you don't succeed, look at what you're doing. Now, if you think about it, if at first you don't succeed, try again, is the way of the Western mentality. You got to struggle with it. And
if at first
you
you
also,
don't succeed, try something completely different.
yeah, let's do a Monty Python on this. Now let's do something completely different. Okay, but if we do the same thing over and over again, expecting a new result, some people claim that Einstein said that that was the definition of mental illness or crazy.
Yeah.
Was to keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a new result. Well, we do that with meditation a lot. A lot of students practice meditation hoping that someday they'll get a result out of it. But things don't work like that. So let's look at it. In fact, the Buddha had 4 kinds of karma. We have talked about the first 3. One is that there are good things that happen, or let us say that we do, that create good results. There are things that we can do that would be bad behavior because we know that the results are going to be bad, like drinking poison. We know the result of drinking poison. And it doesn't have to wait until we're after dead to kill us. It's going to kill us right after we drink it. So now we understand this whole idea of that karma has nothing to do with great distant futures. We can also see that there's another kind of karma, and that is mixed. that bright
Yeah.
and dark actions give a bright and dark result. Possibly the craziest one of all is that the people of Israel, who really like the country of Israel, can give credit for the formation of Israel to Hitler because because of
Okay, I like that.
because Hitler created the Holocaust, and it was the Holocaust that was the resultant cause that brought the British government and others into the formation of the nation of Israel.
Yeah, I like
Okay,
that.
all right. So, was the genocide a good action or a bad action?
Okay, yeah.
The answer to that is that's the wrong question. It happened. And a lot of the people that it happened to didn't like it. And when we think about it happening, we don't like the thought of it happening to us. But we do understand that all action gives, or almost all action gives mixed results, or we don't know the outcome of that action.
Hmm.
Okay, so any action that's mixed will have a mixed result. Any action that's purely good may not give a purely good result. But there's a fourth kind of karma, and that's the kind of karma, or the kind of behavior or action that is neither bright nor is it dark, and it leads to results that are neither bright nor dark. And then it's got a punchline, and I'll save the punchline for a minute. Okay, what do we mean first off by action that is not dark? Well, if we're at that level of wisdom so that we recognize dukkha and avoid it, by avoiding dukkha, by our behavior avoiding dukkha, we're not creating any bad actions. Therefore, the results that we get from our actions will not have an negative effect upon us because we have a pure mind. Okay, so the non-dark action will give a non-dark result, and the non-bright action will also give a non-bright result. What do we mean by not bright? Well, what we mean by that is that we don't want anything from it. A really close, easy example is making merit, putting money into the offering plate. In Thai, it's called tam boon, and the word tam boon literally means to make merit or to make good by what? Saibat, putting something into the to the pot when the monk comes by. All right. So this is what we would consider a good action that would then intentionally we want to bring about a good result, a better life next time. When we get out of that magical thinking, we stop doing things for long-term benefit results, and we start behaving for what we know about right now. Or we can open things up in the sense that we still don't know, but one of the things when Buddha was asked, why does he teach the Dhamma? He would say, for the benefit of future generations. In other words, he's not even looking for the results now. That whatever happens, that's off into the future, but that for now, there is no right or wrong. That we just behave wisely and we don't try to make merit in order to get some result. That we can find our joy and our pleasure right here, right now. Also, we're not going around harming, therefore we're not going to have to deal with the results of that kind of action. Now let me give you the whole show. Action that is neither bright nor dark gives results that are neither bright nor dark, but do lead to the end of karma. Action that leads to the end of action. Behavior that leads to the end of behavior.
Right.
This is a really important concept.
Yeah,
Action
which
that
I'm
leads
struggling with.
action leads to the end of action. If it's good, if it is neither bright nor dark, giving neither bright nor dark results, it leads to the end of action. An example of that is that right now you really need to go to town. So you get up and you go to town and you go shopping and you buy something, etc., like that. All of that action. But now let's come back and start over again, and I'm sitting here and I don't need anything. If I don't want anything, you see, I took action to go to the store, to drive, to go to town because I wanted something, and when I bought it and had it in my hand, that was a good action, led to a good result. Except that my going to town may have not led to the good result. I could have gone to town, bought that item, got it home and it's broken. Or gotten to town and town didn't have what I wanted. So the good action of going to town to buy a pig and there's no pig in town. And so we can't guarantee that our good results give, or our good action gives a good result. But we can guarantee that if I don't take any action at all, that comes from the fact that I don't want to try to get a result. And if I'm satisfied right now with how things are, then that's free from wanting to go to town. And so I wind up doing less. And so the further we progress on the spiritual path, and the more and more we see that we're trying to do a right action to get a right result, because there's sometimes that we want to do that. Let us say it's like this. The difference between selfishness and altruism. That if I give my money away to someone, I have no control over it anymore, or the benefit, other than me watching what's going on, and if I like it, I'll feel good, and if I don't. All right? So we begin to lose control over the action. But if we've gotten to the state of we don't want anything, that we're satisfied, now we can begin to do actions for the benefit of others, because we're not concerned about whether they're getting benefit out of it or not. This is like the Buddha saying, why does he teach the Dhamma? He teaches for the benefit of further generations, of new generations. Without having to say, oh, well, I'm teaching right now because I want 20,000 followers, or I'm teaching right now because I want to start a university, or I'm teaching right now because I want to get on Fox News. All right? No, we're not teaching for that. We're teaching just to let it out, to teach it for future generations. And we don't have a clue about that. So one's private life then comes when the only actions that we're taking are for the benefit of others. Because for myself personally, I'm good. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to do anything to take care of mistakes that I've made, because I didn't do any mistakes in the first place. I didn't do anything at all. And so in this regard, it begins to spin into non-action. And that the Zen really are good with this. In fact, Busho wrote a haiku that I like very much. No place to go and nothing to do, and the spring comes and the grass goes by itself. You see, he was spot on. No place to go.
You repeat that?
Okay, it's a Japanese haiku, and I'm translating it to, some people translate it as just sitting here, but I like the better one of nothing to do. Nothing to do, no place to go. The spring comes and the grass grows by itself. The grass does not need my help, and the spring did not need my help. There's really nothing to do. And we take that attitude, we can just simply enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
Because you can count on there's going to be something that happens in your mind, and then you want something, and then you will spring into action later. But for right now, while we're mindful, we can recognize that there really is nothing needs to be done. I'm good. I'm satisfied. I am free from dukkha, and I don't have to do anything to get free from it. Now, when I first started, in fact, years into Buddhism, the idea of the Four Noble Truths, almost no one ever spoke of the Third Noble Truth. And in my magical thinking, I got to the idea that all that means that anybody that I talk to doesn't know what it is, or that it's so advanced that I'm not ready for it, so teachers don't talk about it. Really what's going on is that the Third Noble Truth should be immediately available to you. You should see that dukkha and come out of it and be in that state of freedom from suffering. So that Third Noble Truth is like the end of action. That's the arrival point. We've gotten ourselves cleaned out. We're free now. Nothing more to do. But as I was mentioning before, a lot of the problem has to do with the translations of the suttas. And so dukkha does not mean suffering, nor does it mean struggle. It just means that things are unsatisfactory at a very, very small place. That level of feeling. The feeling I like it, therefore I want it, or the level of feeling I don't like it, and I want to get rid of it. And that grows into anger, or it grows into lust. If it's ignorant. If it's wise, then we don't have to take action based upon those feelings.
So you're saying that it's the difference between a feeling growing from a very small seed into something, into dukkha, yeah?
Into an emotion,
or,
right.
Or we just leave that seed dormant.
Or
by
inspect it. Not necessarily leave it dormant, but rather just to inspect it, to have wisdom of it, to recognize, oh, there it is, I want something, and then I can say, but I really don't. I just liked it. Let me give you an example of this, and I use this example when teaching Paticca Samuppada, but we're teaching it now. And the story is between Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Sumedho, but he wasn't an Ajahn yet. This was when Sumedho was still about a 10-year monk. And they had gone to a ceremony at the Wat. And it was more than likely a Keten ceremony, because that's the ceremony when all the teenage girls and all the young women get all dolled up as best they can because they're out husband shopping. And they were brought to the temple by their mothers, who have already been nudge, nudge, wink, wink about each other's kids. One of them's got a boy in the Wat, and the other one's got a girl. And so this is where marriages are arranged. So this is the kind of event that it is. And so Ajahn Chah asked Ajahn Sumedho, what do you think? And Ajahn Sumedho comes back with Paticca Samuppada in great headlines. He says, I like it, but I don't want it. In other words, wisdom at the point of contact. Yeah, I like it. These girls are pretty. They work really hard to get really pretty, but I don't want it. I don't want it. But you see, if we are not wise at that point, I like it becomes I want it, which becomes I wonder where she lives.
Which leads to trouble.
Which leads into trouble, wanting something we don't have. Okay, so so look remember that. That's such a beautiful quote. I like it, but I don't want it.
right.
because that's wisdom at the point of contact. And see, for
Yeah, the
men
point of
are
contact. Yeah.
right at that point of contact, when we see that girl, recognize that we like it. She worked really hard to make herself beautiful. And I got to give her that. Okay? And she made herself beautiful because of all of the cultural, psychological stuff that we've got going, right? She's waving that flag out there. Okay?
So he did. He didn't. He likes it. Did he really get to the point of enjoying it?
Well,
Or
we
has he
can
snuffed
enjoy
it
the
out
sight.
before then?
We can like the
Yeah.
sight, enjoy the sight, but then it's over. That we don't
Yeah.
have to pursue. We don't have to go after it. We don't have to want it, nor do we have to take actions to go get it. Now, in the Pali, we're talking about Vedana, the feelings, give rise to tanha, which is thirst, which is the wanting or the desire, and we don't desire her. We don't let it go to that far. We just like it.
Yeah. So Vedana is the first stage,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when you're trying to catch it there.
That's
Ideally.
the right. Ideally, because we'll eventually catch it someplace. But if that source of the feelings arising, that's the sweet spot. That's the one.
And the
This is where
second opportunity. Yeah, and the second opportunity is at Tanaha? Tanha?
well, there's various levels of time, and you can see that in operation in a bar fight. When does a bar fight end? You know always how it gets started, with words. And then somebody stands up, and then somebody else stands up. Okay, and then they approach each other, okay? And all the time, any one of them could have woken up to, let's not go here. This is going to get really, really bad. This is getting dangerous. But neither one of them do because they're into it. And so this tanha brings about the conflict. Now, after the conflict started, when are they going to wake up? Are they going to wake up before one of them's in the morgue? Are they going to wake up before the weapons come out? Hopefully somebody else in the bar is awake enough they're going to try to separate these guys before they hurt each other. And that will be the wake up. The guys who come and break it up. And sometimes you can see that when the fight is broken up, one guy says, wow, I'm glad you're here to break this up. And the other guy's just fighting like that, doing everything he can, not even realize that he's being restrained by his friends. So you know what I'm talking about. All right, so the question is, when do we wake up? The answer to that is the sooner the better. Because we can wake up after we've done some real damage, or we can wake up in the heat of battle, or we can wake up before the battle begins, or we can wake up before the battle stage was set, which is where we're talking about now. Back to the level of feeling. I don't like you, but I don't have to tell you that I don't like you. So this is an important point. That point of contact, why? Because it's the safest point for the beginning student. That's what we want to do. We want to wake up to our feelings. Later, we'll go to the point of waking up. How do these feelings get constructed? We'll wait for that for a later time because this one is the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem is waking up at the point of contact so that we can deal with these feelings when they're very little. And we can make statements like, oh, I like it, she's beautiful, but I don't even want to know her name. I like it, but I don't want it. Don't want it. Okay, and so this is a way of looking at our behavior, because in fact, in that world of dating, the behavior is set off by the desire, and the desire is get the goods. Therefore, I'm going to go do the good action of preening and manly talk and all of that kind of stuff so that I can get the goods. I want it, okay? And so this is, in fact, behavior, pre-behavior, or the internal behavior. I like it, but I don't want it, gives rise to now the end of action. The wise action doesn't act because it didn't want anything. So
The
this
end
is
of desire.
the end of desire is by catching these feelings. I like it, but I don't want it. I don't like it, but I don't have to behave like I don't like it. Because that's when we begin to... Go ahead.
What's the Pali word for desire?
Tanha.
It is tanha.
Tanha.
Yeah. That's the
And
point
the
of
closest
desire.
word to it in English would be thirst. Because we're dry, our mind is dry inside without it. We've got to have it. Tanha, we're thirsting. We've got to have it.
The Vedana is the first contact, and that will lead you into desire. So snuff it out before the desire arises.
Before the desire arises. Right. I like her, but I don't have to say I don't like her, because I do. I don't have to control myself when I'm liking her and wanting her. I can come to the point of I like her, but I don't want her. Let's stop it early. I don't have to get to the point of I like her, but I got to resist. Because the tanha, we're thirsty. We want it. We're already in it. And we're almost driven by it. And so the next step then from the tanha is upadana. And the upadana means I'm going to take it. That's the really rough stuff. When that monk is sitting on the platform and the little girl comes down and bows and scrapes and he grabs her by the arm. Don't grab.
Too late.
Well, that's what upadana is. It's taking something. That's where that word dana, upadana, means that we're taking it. It's not dana given, it's upadana. It's taking things that are not given, which is clinging. That's the word that we come up, upadana is the word that gives us the English language word of clinging. I'm not really sure that that's the best word to use, but we've gotten used to it.
What would you use?
Mine. It's mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
At least mentally, it's mine. I want her, she's mine.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see many musicals and things like that. An example of that, Moulin Rouge. A musical that's been done. Okay. And right at the end of the musical, you know, you've got the guy who's writing the play, who is in the play the sitar player, and that the guru or the warlord or whatever in the play is being played by Harold, but that the real guru is the backer, the Duke. And both the sitar player and the Duke want. And so here's a guy with in the audience, the backers in the audience, and when he sees that the sitar player actually does get the girl right there on the stage, that's when he gets his gun up and runs down the aisle screaming, "She's mine!" Because he's already thought that this girl is his. Because everybody set him up that way, because they basically were giving him, if you pay for our play and back our play, you'll get the starlet who is the star of the play. And so she's mine. That's the upadana, the taking mentally. She belongs to me. That's why I use the word mine, because I'm because that's the kind of word that we have. That's mine, you know.
Yeah. And you're really lost then.
We're lost in. In fact, that
Yeah.
when we have that attitude, she's mine, there are four modes of clinging. And one of them, we're talking about just one right now, the clinging that of wanting something that we desire and we make it mine. This is the state, the woeful state of the hungry ghost, the
Yeah.
pita. You probably heard about it. What is the hungry ghost?
Yes.
The hungry ghost is one who cannot get filled. He can't get what he wants. Even if he marries the girl, she still does not belong to him. She can't even control herself. How do you expect her to be in a position for him to completely control her so that he really does trust that she actually does belong to him? Nope. It's all an illusion. This tanha, this thirst, gives us the opinion or the belief system that we own it.
Mm.
Ownership. Well, guess what? The problem with ownership is in order for something to be owned, it requires an owner. That's where the self comes in. They're the owner, the one who owns the object of desire.
Mm.
And so now we put together exactly the paticca samuppada in this regard is pasa is contact, giving rise to vedana, which gives rise to tanha, which gives rise to upadana, which gives rise to bhava, which is the becoming of jati, the self. I own it. And that's what suffers. The I is what suffers. If we are altruistic, we don't suffer. When we're selfish, we suffer and we create suffering. An example of that would be your brother or someone you've known for a long time, and you know him very well. He comes and he says, "I need some money. Please give me $500. Not too big, not too small, just 500. All right. If I say, "Okay, yeah, I can spare 500, and we'll talk later about when you pay me back. But here, yes, I offer that I'll give you $500." Everybody feels good. But if I have thoughts like, "Oh, wait a minute, I need that money. That's my money," then I'll tell him no. And I have already placed myself in a state of dukkha because I'm grasping and clinging to a $500 that is only a mental construction right now. And so I say no. And now my brother feels bad because he, doesn't get out of jail or whatever he needed the money for. And so
Mm.
he's suffering too. If we say no in that state, but if we understand, I can feel good by giving him the money because I'm not losing the money. He's actually wanting to borrow it.
Mm.
And later, I may have to come to after he hasn't paid me back. I can now give him a gift of the $500 because now, if he doesn't pay me, now he wants to separate. He wants to hide because he knows he owes me money. But if I forgive him from the debt, now I really do have a friend. But if we keep saying no, you can't have it, then we're making ourselves suffer as well as we're making our friends suffer. And it's mind, it's the self that causes it. It's our selfishness. That the reality of the situation is I probably got an extra $500 sitting around and I can, I would not miss it. But the original thought
Mm.
is $500? No! Why? Because we think we're losing something rather than having an opportunity of really building deep friendship. And so by knowing this sequence of events, we can come up to say, there's no reason for me to cling to things that are, by clinging to them, going to cause me and other people suffering. And so at that rate,
Mm.
so that's at a later time. But if we had woken up to the feelings that we had when he first asked for $500, we could have molded over and said yes immediately. I said no because of the original reaction of loss. I'm losing something. I don't trust him or whatever like that. Okay? So now we're understanding this stuff happens really fast in the mind, almost within 1 or 2, 3 seconds.
It's very intrinsic to the human condition, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And so mindfulness at the point of contact, or sati at that point of contact when he actually asks for the money, that's the time for being wise. How do I feel about him asking money? Because if I know how I feel about it, I can manage it wisely. I might, in fact, need to manage it wisely so that I don't give him the money and we both feel good anyway. But telling him just flat out no, and everybody feels bad. So this is a way of. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say your brother might spring this request of $500 on you, and you think about it. Yeah, but I've got a bill that I have to pay, and if I don't pay that, then we're going to be evicted for the house. So we need to think in another way about this in order to come up with a satisfactory solution.
Right. Those are the original ideas. Oh, I need that money. That's the first immediate reaction. I need it. Okay. But if we come to it like you were mentioning, we can work this out. Now we're being altruistic. Now we're not being so selfish. Now we're not causing dukkha. We can find a way of satisfactorily coming to a nice conclusion. All right, so this is kind of, I didn't think about it like that, but this has actually been a kind of a mini teaching of the Paticca Samuppada, of how the mind actually works. But we were going from the angle of not doing anything. To wake up and say, wait a minute, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to yell no at him. I can sit here and not do and think about it. Well, hello.
Hello.
Hi.
I'll phone you soon.
Pardon?
You might not hear.
I'll phone you soon.
Can you hear?
She's too far.
Sorry.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me now? Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
good to see you.
I'll phone you soon. You too.
Hope for you to call me soon. We're just about finished up. We've been at it for an hour and a half now.
I'm not surprised. All right, I'll let you finish.
Okay.
Yeah, keeping you a long time.
It's good to see her again. I hope that she calls soon. So this has been an interesting talk that we've had today, covering several of the topics of the Buddha, including the fact that now we know that there are 4 kinds of action, or 4 kinds of behaviors, or 4 kinds of karma. The kind of karma that is good and gives a good result, and there are a lot of those. Okay? Parking the car could be a good behavior. Leaving it out on the street, we don't know. Okay, so the whole idea then is that it's immediate, or the actual behavior itself doesn't have to wait for years or centuries for you to get the result. The results are immediate. So generosity, we want to be generous with people, so they get the benefit of the generosity, and I get the benefit of their gratitude immediately. Okay, so looking at it from that position, there are good behaviors. It could be possibly said that the Buddha didn't even say that that those exist, but they do. But in fact, if we said that no behavior was good, giving no results at all, then that would be the kind of wrong view to where I could go off and harm anybody that I wanted to and never have any results. No.
Nihilistic.
Right. This is not nihilism. This is reality. The reality is some act, but it's not magical. That's the better part. It's real, but it's not magical. There are good behaviors that give good results. There are bad behaviors that give bad results, but mostly our behavior is mixed and gives mixed results. It's got mixed motivations, and the results have to do with the opinions of people based upon how they feel. Okay? And so in that regard, there's really no good or bad anyway. There is no bright or dark. And when we begin to understand that, okay, my actions are not good or bad, they're not bright or dark, and the results of my actions are neither good nor bright or dark. And when we begin to see that, we stop acting so often, because we can recognize that a lot of our action is of little value.
Best do nothing.
Yeah, just to sit and do nothing. Which would be then, why should I sit here and think about all my troubles and all the things I've got to do when I can sit here and do nothing instead and enjoy the moment? Whatever job there was to be done, it's already been done now.
I wish.
So it is. In this moment, the only job there is to do is to clean the hindrances out of the mind, which means clean the desires, clean the things that you want, clean all your jobs to do out of the mind, and now that's the job to do. So once we clean the jobs out of the mind, now we've done all the job we needed to do, was to stop having jobs to do, stop wanting things, stop having all of this thirst, this tanha. That's the job. And the real job to do is to stop having jobs.
So did you say there were 4 kinds of karma?
Yes. Let me go through them again. Good action gives
let me
good
start.
So, go ahead.
Yeah. Good action gives good results. We had
the opposite.
Bad actions giving bad results.
Yep.
And then we had actions which are neither good nor bad, giving results that are neither good nor bad.
No, that's the fourth one. The third one is
skipping.
both. Let's do it this way. Yes, no, both, and neither.
Yes.
Yes, no, both.
Neither.
And neither.
Yeah, I like that. That's really good.
Okay. There's actually 6 ways to answer the question. Yes, no, both, neither. The next one is I don't know, and the last one is who cares, or it doesn't matter, or it's irrelevant. But in this regard, for the 4 kinds of karma, is yes, no, both, and neither.
Okay.
So there are 6 ways to answer. Go ahead.
Is that in the sutras somewhere?
Yes, it is, in fact. I don't know where, but it's in there someplace. Yes, no, both, neither. And in fact, where this comes from is not from the suttas themselves. This comes from ancient Vedic logic.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the 6 ways to answer a yes-no question is yes, no, both, neither, I don't know, and it's irrelevant.
I don't care.
I don't know, and I don't care.
Yeah.
So that's number 5 and 6. I don't know is 5, and I don't care is 6. But in this case, we do know, and that if we care, That's the same as good and bad and mixed action. So it's better to come back to that neither. Neither is the right answer to this question.
Mm. Mm.
And you saw how it fits precisely with Paticca Samuppada in the sense that if I have wisdom at the point of contact where I have these feelings that are most likely, if I behave ignorantly, is going to have some behavior that's going to have some result. But with wisdom at the point of contact, I can choose whether I need to act or not based upon what I really want, which is nothing at all. Therefore, there's nothing to act, there's nothing to do, no place to go, nothing to do. The spring comes and the grass grows by itself.
Yeah, until it comes to the point for action.
Well, but that point comes for action is when you want something. Be careful about careful of what you want. You might get it.
What you think is what you get.
It is that way. Our mind is the forerunner. You can't act until you have the thought. You can't speak until you have the thought. The mind is the forerunner for everything. This was actually a discussion that the Buddha had with the Brahmins on, because they had the idea that action, big, tough, heavy, like chiseling into stone, that words are like the beach, drawing in the sand, and that the mind is like writing in the air or writing on the water. It's of no value. It's gone immediately. As soon as you write it, it's gone. In the sand, your words don't last very long. But if you do something, it's chiseled in. This is the Brahmin way. And the Buddha says, nope, you got it all upside down. You're not even going to take any action until you have a mental thought about it first, that the mind is the forerunner. If you can't think it, you can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What you think is what you get. No thought, no getting.
No thinking, no getting. Exactly. Isn't that marvelous? That's the outcome. When we stop thinking, then we stop getting the things that we thought we wanted, because we become content with what we already have.
And everything just settles down. Everything settles down. Just as it should be.
Precisely. Things are all right already. We don't need any behaviors. We don't need any actions. We don't need any karma, because things are already good enough like they are. That's that fourth kind of karma. The action that leads to action, to the end of it. Now, in practicality, how that would work in Anapanasati is the action that leads to the end of action would be if we have the hindrances in the mind, then the mind is burning, it's spinning, it's thinking about the past, it's wanting things, it's all of this kind of actions that are happening. The action that we would take to bring to the end of that would be the action of sati, waking up, coming and paying attention to the here now, and by throwing that stuff out. Now we've taken a new action, but the action that we have taken puts us in this state of no action, and so it's the action that brought us to the end of action. That we can't expect the action or the dukkha or anything else to exhaust itself by itself, because we have this constant cause and effect system that keeps rolling on. So we actually have to take an action to put an end to the action.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
If the cops want all the trucks to stop, then the cops are going to have to take an action to get out in the road in front of those trucks to make them stop. Okay. The action that leads to the end of action is is a roadblock. A roadblock puts the end of the action. So we're going to have our own mental roadblocks in there. We're going to stop that pathway of that old traffic pattern of the mind. You say, wait a minute, I'm going to go to the parking lot right now. I'm going to sit down and park. And by turning the engine off with pardon?
Let's take ownership of this. Let's take responsibility for it. Let's take hold of the controls. Yeah.
Right. Because in fact, what we thought who we were was that which was grasping and clinging. And so that self is in fact the self that everybody thinks of themselves. You're now beginning to understand, no, there's a new way of a self, the self that's wise, the self that's using the frontal cortex, not the self of the feelings, which is the anterior cortex. But the reality is there's really no self in there anywhere. It just feels like that there's this, let us call it the point of observation, feels like a self. Where it's not really a point of observation.
It's very convincing. Yeah. It's a great special effect. I mean, I'm totally taken in by it.
Should I say me too?
Well, you've probably seen behind the screen, but
well, you can too. You can
I
too.
know, yeah.
Or better still, you can see right through the screen. You don't have to. You recognize that the screen is there, and upon first view, you can't see through it. But if you start looking very closely, you can begin to see it. Here's an example of that. The discos used to have a disco ball, which is a bunch of mirrors glued onto a sphere that they would turn around and then shine lights on it, okay?
Love them.
Has a stroboscopic effect. And so the whole stroboscopic effect is that it looks like stop motion or freezing things. But if you start observing the things that you can see, you can begin to connect the dots of the darkness. This is basically what we're beginning to do, is we can begin to make this connection so that we can see clearly that in fact we can't see clearly, because there's all of this stuff happening back and forth, and sometimes we can see and sometimes we can't. That consciousness very much operates like that, and so does the self. Sometimes the self is not there. And then the ball comes around and the light shows and we can see, and then we think that the self is there. And then the ball spins and now it's in darkness, and now we think, well, there's got to be a self in there someplace because I just saw it, and when now there's not. And then the light comes back on and we say, aha, I was right, there is a self.
This is the voidness. The darkness is the voidness.
We're not looking at the void. We're not looking at the in-between. We're not recognizing that really everything is void of a self. That there is no inherent value in anything other than humans give things value.
Which is what Heartwood of the Bodhi tree was all about.
What was that? The Bodhi tree?
Which is what Heartwood of the Bodhi tree was all about.
Heartwood, yes. Yeah. That's exactly right. I'm kind of using that as a bit of a reference. I know that book well. Well, did I get insight out of it
again now?
Pardon?
I need to read it again now. I've read it once.
That's the kind of book that takes several rereads.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, Robert. Well, let's draw this to a close now. This has been a delightful time. I'm glad that you put up with my comma and the end of it. Now
Lovely talking to you. Yeah. Great appreciation. And we'll speak again soon, I hope.
Okay, we'll see. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye, Lau. Bye-bye, Lau.
Bye.